Recent developments surrounding the Campi Flegrei supervolcano near Naples have sparked deep concern among scientists closely monitoring the region. According to respected experts, mounting pressure beneath the volcanic field is becoming increasingly evident, and the source of this pressure appears to be far more shallow than previously observed during earlier phases of Bradyseism, periods when the land swelled, seismic activity surged, and tension gradually escalated. One of Italy's most prominent voices in geoscience, Mario Tozzi, a senior researcher with the Italian National Research Council and well-known science communicator, has weighed in on the troubling situation. Following the strongest earthquake recorded in the area in decades, a magnitude 4.6 quake, Tozzi stated unequivocally that an eruption is not just possible but inevitable. He emphasized that this recent earthquake does not represent a release of pressure, nor does it lessen the ongoing threat. Despite occurring slightly outside the more active region of Pozzuoli, near the Solfatara crater, known for intense gas emissions and rapid land uplift, the seismic event remains within the caldera's bounds and thus does not alter the broader volcanic scenario. He explained that while certain zones within the approximately 100-kilometre wide caldera show heightened gas emissions, earthquakes can strike virtually anywhere in the system. What's more unsettling is his warning that stronger earthquakes are likely to follow. In an environment dominated by geological uncertainty, the only clear truth, according to him, is that more events are coming. Tozzi's advice to those living atop the Campi Flegrei caldera was stark and direct. Residents are effectively sitting on a ticking time bomb, and they should consider leaving. His warning aligns with growing concern among volcanologists who study the region daily and increasingly speak out, even at odds with official positions, to alert the public of what may lie ahead. In addition, the threat of phreatic explosions is becoming increasingly alarming, and their potential lethality cannot be overstated. This warning did not come from just any observer. It came directly from the president of Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, INGV, one of the most respected geoscience institutions in the world. With an advanced round-the-clock monitoring network focused on the Campi Flegrei supervolcano, INGV has long been cautious in how it communicates risk. But that caution appears to be shifting. During an official session with Italy's Hydrogeological Risk Commission, President Fabio Florindo publicly stated, "The risk of phreatic explosions is worrying. They can kill." Florindo specifically pointed to the Piscarelli area, where drone-mounted sensors recently measured fumarole temperatures exceeding 140 degrees Celsius or 284 degrees Fahrenheit. Earthquake epicenters and land uplift are all concentrated. According to him, what is unfolding beneath Campi Flegrei does not merely pose a local hazard, it represents a national emergency. Historically, large eruptions from this volcanic system have had global consequences, and the current situation presents serious risks from both seismic and volcanic activity. In his statement to Parliament, Florindo also noted that the scale of possible events is strongly influenced by the underlying tectonic and geological structures. Florindo's statements came during a hearing at the Italian Parliamentary Commission investigating hydrogeological and seismic risks across the country. This session also addressed shortcomings in emergency response and infrastructure following natural disasters since 2019, including the magnitude 4.6 earthquake recorded on July 2nd. The INGV continues to update national hazard maps, which form the basis of Italy's civil protection response plans. In the case of Campi Flegrei, these maps require constant revisions. The government has now allocated €50 million to improve monitoring and preparedness efforts. Among the most urgent projects is the construction of a dedicated evacuation route from Pozzuoli through the Tangenziale highway, intended to serve as the primary escape corridor in the event of a major quake or eruption, provided there is sufficient warning. Calling this situation a national emergency is not just rhetoric. It marks a turning point. It reflects the growing realization that the scientific community can no longer afford to temper its language. The volcano is active, the signals are intensifying, and the time for clarity, preparation and urgent response is now. He warned of the increasing probability of eruptive vents opening, particularly in the vicinity of the town of Agnano, a location historically devastated by pyroclastic flows. Following a recent magnitude 4.6 earthquake, which occurred at an unexpected location and marked the strongest seismic event since the last eruption, researchers developed independent hazard models using two different systems. Both models arrived at the same alarming conclusion: Agnano stands out as the most vulnerable zone. The expert estimated a 40 to 50% likelihood that any new eruptive activity involving pyroclastic flows or even phreatic explosions could initiate from that very area. Despite the lack of definitive evidence that magma is currently nearing the surface, the Italian National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, INGV, considers Agnano the most probable site for vent openings should an eruption occur. The ongoing volcanic unrest is not isolated to a single crater, but spans across a vast caldera with multiple potential outlets. In addition, Florindo said that building inspections are being conducted, but many residents refuse to allow assessments of their homes. The fear, he explained, is that these structures might be declared uninhabitable, forcing evacuations. This fear of displacement is widespread and deeply concerning. He emphasized that structural integrity must be assessed holistically. Damage to even a single load-bearing component can place an entire building at risk. Past incidents, including ceiling collapses during minor earthquakes, underscore the seriousness of the situation. In one instance, a woman narrowly escaped harm when a ceiling gave way. These events, he warned, are not isolated. They are evidence of real and escalating structural threats. The urgency behind these statements isn't rooted in fear-mongering, but in science. With data pointing to rising pressure from shallow magma sources and increasing seismic unrest, ignoring these signals could have devastating consequences. While scientists cannot yet predict the exact timing of a potential eruption, the consensus is clear: the eruption will happen. It is not a question of if, but when. Tozzi also recently warned that additional earthquakes are inevitable, and once the magnitude reaches 5.0, the structural integrity of buildings in the region will likely fail. Structural engineers who have witnessed devastating quakes in Naples confirm this risk, having personally seen buildings crumble during past seismic events. The scientific consensus supports the view that such outcomes are not only possible, but probable in a future earthquake of moderate strength. Official statements emphasize the uncertainty of when a larger seismic event might strike. However, some experts argue that the calm and reassuring tone promoted by authorities and institutions may do more harm than good. This perceived sense of safety, they argue, creates a dangerous complacency among residents living in high-risk zones. Rather than offering vague comfort, some scientists prefer to speak plainly and directly. This approach, often seen as blunt in cultures that favour diplomacy, reflects a commitment to truth and urgency rather than niceties. One respected geoscientist, operating independently of official institutions, has publicly expressed that the evacuation of the Campi Flegrei area should be seriously considered. He maintains that continued residential development in the region places lives at unnecessary risk. According to his view, no one should reside in this volcanically active zone. He advocates for transforming the entire area into a protected natural reserve, similar in concept to Yellowstone National Park in the United States. The Campi Flegrei caldera, known as the Burning Fields due to its geothermal activity, is visibly active. Fumaroles and steaming vents can be seen from balconies in local homes, yet development continues. Plans are even underway to construct a hotel within this hazardous area. Financial interests behind such projects are reportedly resistant to public discussions about the dangers, fearing economic loss if attention is drawn to the risk. The expert suggests a visionary alternative, repurposing the region into a hub for nature-based and cultural tourism, with facilities for education, science and public enjoyment, but not for residential living. He envisions a space filled with museums, parks and research centres, rather than homes and hotels. The fundamental question remains, Why do so many people still live there? Part of the answer lies in history. Early settlers were drawn to the area by its fertile volcanic soil, ideal for agriculture. But the region did not resemble a traditional volcano. Unlike Mount Vesuvius, a clearly defined stratovolcano that looms over the landscape, the Campi Flegrei region is a collapsed caldera marked by gentle hills, not towering peaks. Its volcanic identity was not immediately apparent, leading many to unknowingly establish communities within what is now understood to be the largest and most dangerous active volcanic caldera in Europe. The threat is not theoretical. At any moment, a phreatic eruption, a sudden and violent steam-driven explosion could occur, posing an immediate danger to those living within the designated red zone. For those in harm's way, the time to act may be running out. A critical decision made years ago has begun to reveal its full weight, especially in recent years, as the Campi Flegrei region experiences increasingly frequent and powerful earthquakes, some exceeding magnitude 4. This isn't a sudden development, but the intensification of a process that has been unfolding steadily since around 2005. For 2 decades, the area has endured repeated earthquake swarms and persistent ground uplift, a geological phenomenon known as Bradyseism. While this term can refer to both uplift and subsidence, in this case, the ground has been continuously rising with no significant reversal. This relentless upward movement adds pressure to the Earth's crust, gradually weakening it. The result has been a steady increase in the number, size, and intensity of earthquakes. Scientific studies have shown that the crust in this region has become increasingly brittle. The caprock layer, once a relatively stable barrier that helped contain underground pressure, has lost much of its strength. This layer now contains numerous fractures and weaknesses, creating potential pathways for magma to reach the surface, an alarming possibility. Recent seismic activity underscores this concern. Following a magnitude 4.6 swarm, another swarm struck the area, including at least 21 individual quakes and one registering at magnitude 2.6. These earthquakes clustered around known hotspots, specifically near Solfatara and south of the Evono crater, at shallow depths of just 2,200 metres, 7,218 feet, suggesting activity is occurring disturbingly close to the surface. The seismic swarms have been nearly continuous, moving from one burst of tremors to another without significant pauses. Residents living in the caldera are understandably growing anxious, and scientists monitoring the situation are becoming increasingly uneasy. One volcanologist emphasized the importance of ongoing surveillance. Italy's National Geophysical Institute, INGV, has developed one of the most sophisticated volcanic monitoring systems in the world, operating around the clock. Yet, despite this advanced technology, even leading scientists acknowledge a troubling reality. Monitoring alone cannot guarantee safety. The system remains only partially understood. Even with 24-hour surveillance, experts admit that an eruption could still occur with little or no warning. Todzi cautions that while they hope to detect early signs of a major explosive event in time, new studies suggest this may not always be possible. One such study modelled the formation of the nearby Monte Nuovo crater and revealed that its eruption likely occurred with little to no precursor activity, a sudden violent phreatic explosion without warning. Alarming similarities are now being observed in the current behaviour of the region. This emerging picture paints a scenario where scientific vigilance must be matched by public preparedness. The earth beneath Campi Flegrei is restless, and history suggests it may not remain silent forever. Although initially alarming, the early eruption phase was not magmatic in nature. It resembled a violent excavation process, where a phreatic explosion, driven by superheated groundwater, forcefully cleared a path through the crust. This violent release effectively created a conduit, allowing magma to ascend to the surface and ultimately form a crater. It was only after this explosive event that a true magmatic eruption followed. Renowned volcanologist Giuseppe Mastrolorenzo from Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology has expressed grave concern, even outside his formal role. In recent remarks, he emphasized that the current unrest at Campi Flegrei is unlike any previous Bradyseismic episodes. Historically, uplift events lasted less than 2 years and were accompanied by faster vertical land movement than what is currently being observed. Yet despite the slower uplift now, the earthquakes are reaching significantly greater magnitudes. Scientific investigations confirm that such Bradyseismic activity is not typical unless it precedes or follows an eruption. Since no eruption has yet occurred, it strongly suggests that the region may be on the threshold of one. Of particular concern was the magnitude 4.6 earthquake recorded on July 2nd. Unusually, it struck not at the centre of the uplift zone, but at its periphery, and at a depth nearing 5 kilometres or about 3.1 miles. The depth and location made this event stand out, signalling something far more ominous. According to Mastro Lorenzo, this quake offers compelling evidence that subterranean gas pressure is now significantly higher than in previous Bradyseismic phases, disturbingly so. This escalating pressure not only raises the likelihood of stronger earthquakes, particularly along the caldera rim, but it also suggests a troubling increase in the presence of shallow magma, as confirmed by recent geophysical studies. Adding to the instability is the fractured nature of the terrain around Campi Flegrei. Numerous faults intersect the region, weakening the cap rock that normally restrains upward magma movement. Magma naturally seeks the path of least resistance, and these faults effectively act as subterranean highways. Recent geoelectrical surveys in areas like Pisciarelli and Solfatara, where earthquake epicenters are clustered, reveal that these fault zones resemble elevator shafts or mining tunnels, making it easier for magma to rise. Moreover, the fumaroles dotting the landscape, while releasing some of the built-up gas, are insufficient to fully relieve the internal pressure. Archaeological and geological evidence indicates that this region has experienced frequent phreatic eruptions in ancient times, long before millions of people came to live in what is now one of Europe's most densely populated volcanic zones. Experts such as Mastro Lorenzo, De Natale, and Roberto Scandone have all warned that human habitation in this area poses a severe risk. The remnants of ancient phreatic blasts are still visible today, etched into the terrain like warnings from the past. Over the centuries, the pathways that once allowed gas and magma to escape have likely been blocked by seismic shaking and rock collapses. And when those natural escape routes are sealed, pressure continues to accumulate beneath the surface until it is violently released. This situation further elevates the likelihood of phreatic eruptions. The dynamics are comparable to a sealed pressure cooker. If internal pressure is not safely released through a valve, continued heat will eventually lead to a catastrophic explosion. In this case, the persistent heat source is the underlying magma. Years ago, access to Solfatara and Pisciarelli was restricted due to safety concerns, yet both locations remain popular tourist destinations. Visitors still gather around the active fumaroles, filming and observing the gas vents, often unaware of the underlying risk. Shockingly, residential homes are built in dangerously close proximity to these volatile zones. Recent observations at Pisciarelli revealed a slight decline in gas emissions. While seemingly benign, such a change could indicate that one or more subterranean pathways have become obstructed, trapping pressure rather than allowing it to vent. This subtle shift is potentially alarming and underscores the importance of close monitoring. Despite repeated scientific warnings, little has been done in terms of immediate action. Proposals have been made to reinforce infrastructure so that buildings might better withstand seismic activity, but these efforts would take years to implement. Meanwhile, the possibility of large-scale evacuations remains a logistical nightmare. In Iceland, authorities successfully relocated the small town of Grindavik, which housed only a few thousand residents. But in Campi Flegrei, where estimates of the population at risk range from 50,000 to over 800,000 people, depending on how the danger zone is defined, the scale of such an operation would be staggering. The warnings persist, yet meaningful interventions remain slow. Scientists continue to monitor the region closely, knowing that time may be running out. If all of this sounds alarming, it's because it is. The silence before a phreatic eruption can be deadly, no tremors, no visible signs, just a sudden explosion with devastating consequences. The people living in and around Campi Flegrei are facing not just a geological threat, but a social one: fear, uncertainty, and the very real risk of being unprepared. So what does this mean for the future? It means that awareness, science, and action are more crucial than ever. The data is speaking, the land is shifting, and experts are warning us. The question now is, will we listen? If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep shedding light on these critical issues that affect millions. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.